Hey guys, this is Shady. So this is going to be a bit more of a personal video because I actually just had surgery on the 5th of February and I was actually in hospital for 5 days. So if you didn't know, I've actually had back problems for quite a long time, since I was 18, and I'm 21 now, so it's been quite a few years. So in this video it's going to be explaining what I went through and how I actually got this injury. So I was actually an electrician apprentice and I was biking to work saving up for a car. So the funny thing, or not funny thing, however you look at it, was this was actually going to be my last day ever biking to work. I was actually buying a car that night, so I don't know why this happened, but it somehow happened on the last day. When I was actually hit off my bike, I was hit pretty much dead on by the car. It was about 6 o'clock in the morning, and I think the driver was actually really tired. He looked incredibly tired from memory. So when I was hit, I flipped over the bonnet, flipped over the roof, and then hit onto the road. So it was quite a big impact, but initially I actually thought I was in no pain at all. So I told the driver that, and he, I wouldn't say it's a hit and run, but he left without leaving his details. But I was in shock, so I didn't actually really know what was going on. I was actually hit about 5 minutes away from work, which was, I guess, quite lucky that I could actually just walk there. But when I was actually walking, I started to feel the pain a little bit more. I was getting worried that no one believed me that I'd actually been hit. Pretty stupid thing to worry about, but when I got to work, I was incredibly pale, so they knew something was up, and they took me in the hospital. So I had an x-ray, and I had a small fracture in my spine, which I was actually told I was incredibly lucky at the time. And I went back to work after 2 weeks. I was an electrician apprentice, so it can be quite physical at times, and I was basically just unable to do it. My back has continually got worse, and I knew something was wrong. I continued to try and work for a few months, but it was getting to the point where I couldn't even get out of bed in the mornings, so I had to actually give up my job. I did physio for about a year, on and off, trying to get my movement right and get my strength up a little bit. I was always into sports, so I was fairly fit, but eventually one of the physios determined that my movement wasn't right, and he thought that I had a further injury to my back. So I went in and had an MRI scan, and I had a prolapse disc. So if you didn't know, a prolapse disc is basically where one of your discs in your back bursts, usually caused by a big impact, and in my case it was obviously getting hit by the car. So this can affect your movement, it can affect your nerves, because the prolapse or the burst disc can actually push up against your nerves. And in my case I was getting dead legs and a lot of pain in my legs from it, and also a lot of scar tissue, which is caused from the liquid bursting. It heals in the scar tissue, and that's where I was getting the main pain from, and it was all around my disc. So eventually, after I knew I had an MRI scan, I tried to get surgery, but I was actually turned down because they thought it was too risky at that time. So I went back and tried to study. I studied for a year. I did a degree in ICT, but my back was continually getting worse, and I knew I had to try and do something about it. If it was going to keep getting worse, I didn't know how it was going to be in a few years, if I could even study at all. I decided to take action knowing that my back was continually getting worse, so eventually I got consent to have surgery. But for my particular surgery, they actually needed 2 surgeons, and they had to actually go through my stomach, which usually, obviously, they go through your spine, but because of the scar tissue it was too risky, which is why initially I was turned down. So for my surgery, they needed 2 surgeons, and I was lucky that the Accident Compensation Society here in New Zealand were able to pay for my surgery, and I had surgery on the 5th of February. So I was in hospital for 5 days recovering, and it was, to be honest, pretty difficult. At first, couldn't really move, couldn't walk at all, but I had a couple of weird experiences, and I had these little tubes, without being too gruesome, in my stomach, which every 8 hours they delivered local anaesthetic to try and obviously take away the pain from the surgery. So I actually had a reaction to the local, and I had this basically seizure-like shaking for 30 minutes. I could not control my body at all, and it was incredibly scary and obviously very painful because I had just come out of surgery. I had bruising in my hips from the amount that I was shaking, and to this day, that's probably the most scared I've ever been in my life. So after I had the reaction to local, they gave me more morphine tablets to try and cope with the pain, and the next day I woke up having vomiting fits from the morphine, because I'm actually allergic to codeine, which is the only thing I've ever found myself to be allergic to, and morphine's actually fairly similar. So I think I'm slightly allergic to the morphine on a certain dosage, and yeah, so that was not very fun. But after 5 days I was able to go home, and I was stuck in bed for nearly 2 weeks, and since yesterday I was actually able to start sitting down again, so I'm actually started to play a little bit of Battlefield, but I completely missed out on the hardline beta, but obviously it's for a good cause, and hopefully it's worth it after the surgery. So here's a little x-ray 2 days after my surgery, so that you can actually see what they did. So they pulled out my disc basically and put in like a little metal disc which has bone marrow either side. So the bone marrow, after, I think it starts about 3 months, but it's about 6 months for it actually to gain a lot of strength. It turns into one solid bone, so I lose that disc, which is actually my L4, which is in your lower back where it curves in. So it was actually probably the worst place to have my injury, because it's obviously key to all of your movements. So they replaced that, and I've got like a 10cm scar on my stomach, which obviously I don't really care about, unless obviously the surgery doesn't do anything, and then it was basically for no point. So sorry for this video being a little bit of a negative video, but I'm usually quite a positive person, so I guess tried to keep the best frame in mind I could in this 3-year period. So this is actually a bit of a reason why I actually got into PC gaming. For that first year when I was doing physio, I was getting really bored, and I was obviously getting over Xbox, so that's where I actually got into PC. So if I didn't actually have this injury, I would have never been experiencing Battlefield, or even probably uploading YouTube videos. So I've always been someone that believes things happen for a reason. Not sort of, you know, everyone's destined to do sort of things, but if something happens, you can always find good points out of it. So thanks for watching, guys, and thanks for dealing with a lack of videos lately, and I hopefully you guys understand. So see you guys next time.